The wheel, the light bulb, the automobile, the refrigerator, personal computers, the internet, and the smartphone. What do all of these life-changing inventions have in common? Each is the product of innovation, a trait that has been the cornerstone of how our country has grown and blossomed into the world leader it is today. This same trait will be the cornerstone for years to come. Today, innovation is all around us, in agriculture, energy, transportation, and technology, especially here in Boston, where we have some of the world's top higher education and research institutions. The pivotal questions facing these top-tier colleges and universities are, where does innovation come from, and how do we replicate it? How do you teach a student to be innovative? How do we prepare young people to think differently, to take chances on an idea no one has ever had before, to persevere when a chorus of voices, including your own, may be telling you to stop? We want to help our students take the road less traveled and pave the way for their future. To support that goal, in late 2020, Jack Shields, BC High class of 1979, funded the Shields Center for Innovation with a $5 million gift, the second largest in the school's history. Jack's vision is to build on the area's history of innovation, cultivating that spirit while teaching students the skills they need to be innovators of the future. All of which brings us here today, creating the next generation of innovators. From the campus of Boston College High School in Dorchester, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Grace Carter-Regan, president of BC High. With me today is Jack Shields, BC High class of 1979, and the man responsible for the Shields Center for Innovation. Jack, your generosity and commitment to your alma mater and our boys is appreciated more than you know. With this center, we'll be able to help shape minds and create pathways for our students in ways we never have before.
I've said it before, I can't say it enough. This place and my experiences here in the classroom and on athletic fields changed my life. I really don't know where I would have been if my mother hadn't dropped me off on Morrissey Boulevard against my will in 1975. BCI gave me the tools, the traits that I needed to be successful in life and in the business world. I'm forever grateful to my parents and to BCI for making me the man I am today.
It's one thing to be innovative, but for a place like BC High, how do we instill within our students the creativity and curiosity that drives innovation? How do we teach our students to think and act in an innovative and entrepreneurial way? How do we set them up for the future of success in bringing that mindset into their experience in higher education or elsewhere?
We need to start early. If a child has a knack for music, we start by enrolling them in classes and encouraging recitals. And we do the same in sports. But we don't do that in innovation, and we should. We should just start a whole lot earlier, encouraging young kids to recognize patterns that they'll be able to use for the rest of their life. We must nurture their thinking and their imaginations and should never call anything that they attempt a failure. In business, it's called iterating. It's not failure, it's about iteration. So we must do it early, and we need to do it often.
Thank you, Jack. That's a great perspective, and one that we want to build upon today during our panel discussion with our experts from Harvard, Boston College, Babson, and Northeastern. Our topic today, how innovation can be taught. Let's join our moderator, Jane Swift, former Massachusetts governor, who is now president and executive director of the Learn Launch Institute, an education innovation hub. Governor?
Well, thank you, Grace, and certainly thank you to Jack. And I want to welcome everyone who's joined us today for the second virtual event of the Shields Center for Innovation. As Grace and Jack mentioned, teaching innovation isn't intuitive, but there are best practices, there are lessons to be learned, and certainly there could not be a better place to explore those topics than here in Greater Boston, as the first video said, where we have both the most innovative companies in the world and the most innovative and entrepreneurial minds in higher education. Lucky for us, 4 of the best are with us today. So let's get started. First, I want to introduce our panelists, and then I'll be asking them some questions. Jerry Doyle, the Popolo family executive director of the Edmund H. Shea Jr. Center for Entrepreneurship at the Boston College Carroll School of Management. That's a handful of a title, but Jerry is a lifelong serial entrepreneur who is now one of the most active early stage seed investors in the United States. He's built 2 startup companies, prospective and global marketing, into recognized industry leaders. He operates Doyle Enterprises, where he advises a handful of Boston-based startups, and he's also helping cultivate the next generation of entrepreneurs as the executive director, as I said, of the Shea Center for Entrepreneurship at Boston College. Jerry, thank you for joining us today. Next, we have Dr. Stephen Spinelli, who is the 14th president of Babson College. A lifelong entrepreneur himself, Dr. Spinelli co-founded Jiffy Lube International and helped turn Jiffy Lube into the nation's dominant competitor with more than 1,000 service centers. Currently, Dr. Spinelli is on the board of directors for Planet Fitness and the board of advisors for the Berwind Corporation. Dr. Spinelli has been invited to speak and lecture at numerous conferences and universities around the world. And today's panel discussion is just the latest venue where he'll share his expertise. Dr. Spinelli, welcome. Matt Signary is the executive director of the Harvard Innovation Labs. In this role, he oversees the iLab's strategy and operations and is the primary contact to the iLab's key stakeholders and the local, national, and global innovation community. Prior to his time at Harvard, Matt was on the government innovation team at Bloomberg Philanthropies. He was also a senior advisor to Boston Mayor Thomas Menino, where he focused on innovation and entrepreneurship. And last but certainly not least, Raj Ichimbadi, he helped me to hopefully say that correctly, is the dean at Northeastern's DeMaurice Kim School of Business. Dr. Ichimbadi is major research interests in strategic innovation focus on how firms balance the importance of exploring opportunities in emerging markets with exploiting opportunities in current markets. His research articles have been published in some of the top business and statistics journals in the country. Raj, thank you as well for joining us today. So we have an extraordinary panel, as you just heard, and I want to thank everyone who took the time to join us. I want to remind everyone that you can ask questions. You can use the QR code that was on your registration page, so please do make sure to send those in. Okay. I want to start with what I think is probably the most unnerving part of being an innovator, and that's getting started. It's about how do you begin? Who do you turn to? So could each of you just give us an example of when you are beginning to innovate in your role? How do you start? Why don't we start with Jerry?
Well, thank you, Governor, and thanks for being here, having me today. It's great. It's great to be part of BC High and the whole subject of innovation. I think to answer that question, as an entrepreneur and as an innovator, you start. You just go. You start. Innovators just think of it. They identify a problem. There's a pain point, and they say, I want to try to fix this, and they probably start talking to people about it. They go to their network. They talk to their friends. They go to potential customers. They talk to, if it's in school, they talk to classmates. And they say, what do you think of this pain point? What do you think of this problem? Have you thought about solving? I got this idea. And then they just start coming up with an idea. And that's what innovators do. They have a tendency just to act and start to solve a major pain point.
So I love that idea about pain points. President Spinelli, you've had a ton of experience and you still advise companies. How do you decide which pain point that you want to focus on or which problem it is you want to solve?
Yeah, it's a good question because the world is full of a lot of pain, and so in a lot of ways that means there's big opportunities to create value and to solve problems. I can get very basic about this. Go to the market and find the problem, and that I like to describe it as the 3 M's. The first one is market demand. Is somebody need something? Do I see a problem and do I have a solution? And then it's market size and structure. Is it big enough that I can really have an impact? Is the problem big enough that the juice is worth the squeezing? And the third M is margin analysis. Am I capable of putting together a business model that can solve that problem and generate a profit? And by taking it through market demand, market size and structure, and margin analysis, I can get a pretty good idea if it's worth the time and effort and the pain that's going to be necessary to get a business launched. 3 M's, remember that.
So that is a great way to think about the 3 M's. Matt, you run the iLab, and so you're deciding every day which innovations merit the attention of Harvard. So innovators are deciding, where to start. How do you decide which things that have started are the good innovations?
Yeah, no, I think with Jerry's point, he's totally right. I think reducing the barriers to entry, especially for these amazing young leaders at BC High, we want it not to feel like you need an epiphany or some big moment to be able to jump in. I think the importance of proximity in 2 ways is really important. For us here at the iLab, we're trying to create structured serendipity across the 13 Harvard schools. So you have people with different backgrounds and ideas mixing and mingling together. So sort of that depth of distance, getting people close together, because great ideas usually come from a community versus just one person. The other side of proximity, I think, is in the context of customer discovery, how you get really close to what Steve said, get close to the pain, deeply understand your customers, the people who you are working with. Because again, I always go back to my time with Mayor Menino, and he said, the city is not in this building in City Hall, just as it's not in the Innovation Lab site. Get out into the city, understand people, meet them where they are. Because ultimately, in my mind, innovation is, it is an act of service to create a better world for others. So you've got to deeply understand who you're serving before you start innovating.
So I love the reference to Mayor Menino, who was a wonderful public servant, and I love that sort of bringing down the distances between folks. Raj, I loved that note as we sort of explore this idea of innovation and how you get started, of the juxtaposition in your bio about how you both explore opportunities in emerging markets while at the same time exploiting opportunities in current markets. Could you talk a little bit about that tension between exploring new things and exploiting existing opportunities? I think that would be just a really interesting way to also think about getting started.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Swift, and thank you for this opportunity. So I'm going to give you an example to explain what really I mean by exploiting current markets and exploring new markets. Think about Blockbuster, started in 1987, was dominant by 2000, had about 5,000 locations, and all of a sudden, by the end of that decade, had actually vanished. And if you think about history, this is a very common thing. When I was growing up, my father used to talk about Polaroid. He used to call it the apple of his era, kind of. But Polaroid, again, has vanished and so on. And so one of the things that I advise firms and of course individual innovators is, while you are exploiting your current market, if you're a Blockbuster, always think about the future, how the world is going to change around you, perhaps 5-10 years from now, so that you navigate and go into that particular market. While it is easy advice to give to people, you need to exploit current markets and explore new markets, it's not very easy. Because I'm reminded of a very famous essay by David Foster Wallace. In the first paragraph of This is Water, he talks about 2 young fish swimming along in the sea, and an older fish crosses them and says, "How is the water?" And the 2 young fish continue swimming along, look at each other, and one of them says, "What the hell is water?" And that is what happens when you're exploiting your current market. You get caught up in your current world. You don't think about the future. So my advice in all these kinds of things is innovation is a mindset. While you're doing well, also prepare for the future. And that's basically what that balance or the juxtaposition comes from.
So I've heard that water example used teaching about equity as well. So I think it is so applicable. We often take for granted the thing that's right around us and don't notice it. So that was great to make it tangible. I want to make this discussion also more tangible for the students and perhaps the parents who have joined us from BC High today. Each of your institutions is a teaching institution, and obviously at the collegiate level, but BC High is working at the high school level. So I'm wondering if you have an opinion. We obviously know that Mr. Shields does, but about at what level or at what age you think it's appropriate to start being taught about innovation and what that might look like in the classroom. So President Spinelli, I'm guessing that you might have an opinion about what age you think students are ready to be taught about innovation.
I do. I have a fairly strong opinion, and I think you ought to be talking to the baby in the womb. You ought to be thinking about what the nature of opportunity is just pre-birth. So that they're relatively fully formed before you talk about entrepreneurship. But I literally mean that the human condition seeks knowledge in an aspirational form. So virtually from birth, you're looking to do something to improve your condition. That's a natural phenomenon. I get worried about education that we beat it out of people, that we're doing anti-entrepreneurship, anti-innovation education, and we're putting them into rigid slots. And I would ask, I love Jack Shields for what he's doing at BC High, because he's making it closer to the womb as we bring education to these young students. And I would really promulgate the understanding of risk-taking and the knowledge that you gain through that. It's not about the classroom. I would ask people to even change their rhetoric as educators. And because we have these old feelings about a classroom, I'm sitting there and there's a sage on the stage and they tell me what the knowledge is that I need. And I think young people's mind, especially today with all the technology they have, there's lots of inputs, and curating that becomes difficult. We have a great role in education to curate all those inputs, or to help to support the individual student from womb to tomb in curating that knowledge and bringing it to some kind of sense for the students. So really early on, let's not mark kids down, let's build them up.
So I love that. And as we're talking about the parental role, because if we talk about wombs, we have to be talking about parental roles. I wonder, it's not a huge secret that I'm a parent. This was not well kept information, closely held information in Massachusetts. But if I'm a parent, right, and there are parents here, and they're like, yes, President Spinelli is right. I want that education for my child. Jerry, how would a parent recognize an institution that was embracing innovation in their curriculum if they were to walk into a school building today? See, I got away from classroom, President Spinelli. I'm a quick study there.
Well, I think what they'd hear from their student is that they heard a great talk today from an innovator or an entrepreneur that came into the classroom. Or maybe if they'd hear that, I was thinking about the question earlier, as a youngster, you take field trips, right? The elementary school, you take field trips, you go to museums, you go to parks, but are they going in to visit startups? Are they going in to visit a company? So maybe somebody comes home from school and says, we had a great field trip today. We went to see company XYZ. They taught us how they made ice cream, or they did something fun for the elementary school kids. And we heard from the person who started that company. So they would hear that there's a lot of discussion around innovation, and they would hear that the students were having experience. Maybe they'd hear that there's a competition. You have to come up with a business idea, and you have to talk for 30 seconds in front of class about what that business idea may be. And people had some fun with it, and so I think they again, back to my earlier question, like entrepreneurs, they just do stuff. Like in education, just start. At a young age, I agree with what Steve had to say. Just get talking about innovation and entrepreneurship. And I like the idea. I remember I went into the inner city schools of Boston, the elementary schools, and talked about my story of starting my company. And these were second graders, third graders, fourth graders. And you dummy down the story, you make it fun, but it's fascinating to them. They're a sponge, and they want to hear this kind of stuff. And that goes all the way through junior high, high school, even in the college level. One of our most successful programs at BC is bringing entrepreneurs on campus to talk to students, talk about their ideas, how they failed, how they didn't. A lot of people think that you never fail in life. Like it's okay to fail or have a misstep. And so let students hear that. That's what I would want my kids to tell me as if they were coming home from school.
So Matt, Jerry actually just gave some great tips to educators who may want to nurture that innovative spirit in their students, field trips, bringing in speakers. Can you think of other ways that an educator might encourage or nurture that innovative spirit in their students?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it starts early, as Steve and Jerry had said. My kids are 8, 6, and 4, and I have to say I have a profound belief in the power of young people. And honestly, I think sometimes their answers and ideas are better than ours as adults. So the exposure and experiential learning is deeply important. But also, I think what we really need to combat is this pervasive culture of perfectionism, that we're trying to get it perfectly right, and there is one right path to do things. Some people have talked about the notion of we're building or educating excellent sheep. I think what we need to do is move beyond this narrow sense of excellence and help cultivate in young people the ability to fail fast and learn. I mean, it's all learning, as Jack pointed to up front. One thing I also want to point to is just the notion of converting sort of passive classroom learning into active experiential learning. And I think of one organization I've been really involved with for the last decade, Generation Citizen, that's in a number of Boston public schools across the state and across the country. And that takes the more passive learning, civic skills and knowledge, and says, let's get these middle and high schoolers to work on problems in their own community, build creative solutions, and take action. I think at heart of all of innovation is this bias to action, which, as I look around this conversation, and if I could see the folks who are here on the call, I think we're a community of people who are getting things done. And ultimately, I think there's an impatient optimism about the way innovators operate.
So I'm actually trying for Lent to be more patient, but I do appreciate that nod to being impatient. So, but I want to also get a little bit more actionable and bring this to brass tacks. So, Dean Ichimbadi, every one of our great innovators here represent very prestigious schools. And frankly, as a parent of now 3 college students, I know what season we're in. We are right smack dab in the middle of college admissions. And so that is on the mind of many students who are in high school. And one of the things that students who are buying into what we're talking about today and thinking about college as a pathway to an exciting career in innovation is, what skills do I need? Right? Like, how do I make sure I'm ready when I get to one of these great schools, when I've had this great nurturing of this innovative spirit? How do I make sure I have the right skills that I've developed when I get to your great institution? How do we measure that? How do we know we have that?
Thank you. To me, the ability to be innovative is absolutely going to be a critical capability for the future. We are obviously going through a pandemic right now, but if you take 2002, when we had SARS-2, e-commerce in Asia flourished, and you had companies like Alibaba come up, In 2008, 2009, after the global recession, we had the value economy, Airbnb and Lyft and companies like that. So this too shall pass, and we are going to have a great economy fairly soon. But what is needed is that innovative spirit in our students. And I want to just pivot slightly and move away from entrepreneurship just as new ventures to entrepreneurialism as an attitude that students need to have. And that's a mindset, that's a practice. And to me, when I think about what students can do, and it's something that they need to do daily, and I would say there are three basic skill sets that people need. One, the ability to question conventional wisdom. And it happens over time. It doesn't come to people on day one, but you practice it. The second thing I would say is the ability to connect the dots. And the way to do it is expose yourself to multiple disciplines, expose yourself to multiple people from different disciplines, so that you get fertile ideas from across. And last but not the least is, I would say, embrace what I call as a paradox model. Don't get pigeonholed into an either or thinking, this or that. Great innovators, great innovative minds are people who adopt both and thinking. And so these are the three skills that I would say students need to start developing as they think about moving into college. And this is going to be helpful for them as they navigate their post-graduation options.
You would think I still had a high school junior because I just wrote down those three themes. I was like, those are great Common App essay topics, like question, conventional wisdom, connect the dots, embrace. Juniors, write this down. Embrace a paradox model rather than a this or that. That is a great Common App essay for an innovator's thinking. Matt, the next question is one actually that your former boss, Mayor Menino, and I, a zillion years ago, back before my hair was gray, and I used to actually think about and discuss quite often, which is we spawn a lot of innovations here in Massachusetts. And in fact, both Facebook and Microsoft were started right on the Harvard campus. But then they headed west to grow and expand. We've had success with the biotech industry, staying and growing here. How can we make sure that we support more of the innovations that develop on our campuses to grow and to create vibrant communities of employment and culture here?
Well, it's a great question, and an important one. I mean, there's a lot to be proud of in our city, and I would say we are one of the world's leading innovation economies. But the important thing is that's ever changing. We can't be self-satisfied with that. And I always think innovators have a mild sense of paranoia, which is not inherently a bad thing. And innovation is a striving to do more and better. What I'd say, past performance doesn't guarantee future success, and incumbent leaders always need to worry about startups. You see how during the pandemic, other cities across the country have built robust innovation economies. And, to take Raj's Blockbuster example, they grew complacent. They could have bought Netflix for $50 million in 2000. They thought it was a niche market. Now it has more than 50 million users. So, I don't want us to lose our leadership here. Education is a deep, important part of it. But, I have a few quick thoughts. But before moving on, I want to be very clear. I am incredibly bullish on this city and the future of the innovation economy in Massachusetts, and I'd always bet on Boston. And partly that is about young people. I mean, we have one of the largest populations of young people between 20 and 34, more young adults than almost any major city in America, and the next generation of innovators is here on this call. So we can continuously reinvent ourselves. I mean, I think back to what Governor Baker said in the first of these conversations about the American, the industrial, a whole host of revolutions we've led. So we've got to stay at the forefront of quantum AI, any host of different things. And that is, I think about what's happening in our backyard in Alston. We've built a new enterprise research campus. Our School of Engineering and Applied Sciences moving across the street. The next decade will change tremendously. And it reminds me of, the Seaport and the Innovation District downtown, how that's grown. Two other quick thoughts. we should be proud of who we are as one of the foremost centers of higher education across all these amazing colleges and universities on the call. We need to keep people here, but we've worked with folks from 131 different nationalities who are entrepreneurs who are going to go off and build great things around the globe. So we shouldn't have a binary either or measure for success. We should, build all the infrastructure, the funding, the policy landscape, the housing, and all those factors that are essential to a thriving startup ecosystem. The last thing I just want to say is, I'd be remiss in not noting we need to ensure we build a truly inclusive ecosystem that supports innovators and entrepreneurs from all ages, races, genders, and backgrounds. I've seen up close the systemic inequities for female founders, founders of color. They are real, they're here, and they're across the country. So we need to do better as a society, and I want us to lead the way here in Boston. What's really exciting to me, I joke, I work for the most diverse mayor in Boston history, and that's because, like me, he was an Italian American. You look at the slate of candidates who are in the race for November, and, people on this call should take some credit because 1 month ago, one of your proud alums now just jumped into the mayoral race effective today. And it is one of the most incredible and awe-inspiring slates of men and women across this city. So I feel really confident on where we're going as a city. I feel really confident on our innovation ecosystem, but we can't grow complacent because we're not guaranteed to stay at the top.
That was an awesome answer, both hope and challenge. And I embrace both. And I'm going to keep going with the questions, but I do also want to remind folks to use that QR code, or if you don't know how to do that, I'm sure there's another way to forward questions. And we particularly would love to get questions, I know, from students, because that is the purpose for all of us being here today. Raj, Northeastern. So we're obviously talking about a great program in the high school, and all of you run great undergraduate and graduate programs, but Northeastern has a master's in innovation program, which I find fascinating. Could you tell us a little bit about that and what led the university to create that master's?
Yeah, thank you. That's a terrific question. So this Master of Science in Innovation is a one-year program that helps develop agents of change, if you will. And so it's a one-year program, and we focus on 3 different literacies, actually. Obviously, people who are going to be future innovators need to understand technology. They need to understand data, because data happens to be the new oil. And last but not the least, we encase these 2 literacies within human-centered literacies, because at the end of the day, it is about ethical reasoning and critical thinking and innovativeness, and these are the skills that are going to be helpful. So this actually arose because of our undergraduate program. At the undergraduate level, we have a fairly successful program in entrepreneurship and innovation. About 10% of our undergraduate students are entrepreneurship and innovation majors, and they cater to different audiences. Either they go and work for startups, or they go into social entrepreneurship, or sometimes they may go to work for large companies like Netflix to foster innovation and so on. So that is basically what came up. But at the end of the day, I want to emphasize one thing for the BC High students. What does the world need? The world needs more CEOs, not the traditional chief executive officers, but chief entrepreneurial officers who are entrepreneurial change makers who can make an impact in this world. So I'm going to endorse what Matt said. Not only should you be impactful, you should also strive to create a just and an equitable world. And that can only happen if you imbibe the spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation.
Well, I love that challenge. And hopefully it will be a diverse group as well of individuals who are the CEOs, the entrepreneurial leaders of tomorrow. One of the things you're doing at Babson to advance that, President Spinelli, are your action tanks, which I hope are safer than shark tanks, that connecting students with problems, which you already talked about, solving problems and finding pain points. So can you tell me more about that and how maybe you could maybe use that type of a program so that Boston perhaps and BC High could be the classroom for students to learn about innovation by putting them into an action tank?
Yeah, I think about the traditional thinking is about think tanks, and in a lot of ways, colleges and at some level high schools are massively established traditional think tanks. And much of the discussion here around innovation and around entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial mindset is about action. But it is, I don't want to diminish the importance of thought. For us, entrepreneurship is a way of thinking, reasoning, and acting that is opportunity obsessed, holistic in nature, leadership balanced for the creation of value. That's how we define it. So if you curate that relationship between thought and action, how are you doing that with the same kind of rigor that you build a curriculum? And at Babson, we've created a whole series of centers and institutes that are market-facing, that bring the classroom into the clash room, like being cute like that, and causing people to reason through the dynamic event that they want to happen. So you have to come together in that way. The action tanks make it very specific. So we have action tanks. There's one called Food Soul. There's one on mobility. And we go to industry expertise and we say, what are the problems that you're having? We want to clash. We want to get engaged in the problem solving and take action. So the action is in sometimes a client service relationship, and sometimes it's in a startup, and sometimes it's in a very specific innovation within the companies. And those are curated, graded intersections with the curriculum. I think that's the entrepreneurship in a lot of ways is the liberal arts of business. It has to bring all the thought and action required to solve the problem. And the action tanks have been just a huge success. And students can opt in or out of an action tank. So that you can take a course, you can opt into an action tank. And it really does generate this sort of personal motivation and the connection with learning.
So you would have thought I told you to end on that personal motivation because it transitions beautifully to this question that I have for Jerry. Boston College, like BC High, is a Catholic institution. And my daughters also went to a Catholic high school, and they had this wonderful framing question that their principal, Father Bernie, would always put to you, which was to explore the who am I? And the Jesuits have this great sort of focus on purpose and passion, which I think is very consistent with innovation as well. But how do we connect those things? How do we connect the Jesuit tradition with what we've heard as this sort of robust need to nurture the innovative spirit and encourage students to embrace the sort of action and challenge of becoming entrepreneurs and innovators?
Well, I think the Jesuits were the greatest entrepreneurs around. I mean, and I think it fits perfectly with Jesuit education. You know, the Jesuit education is about the journey of discovery. You know, you're basically saying, what difference can I make, right? And that's what we want our students to ask themselves. So how can you ask yourself that if you can't develop that entrepreneurial mindset that we've talked about? That mindset which is saying, I'm willing to take risks. I'm willing to get outside my comfort zone and really, from an intellectual standpoint, question everything. You know, what are the problems out there? You know, use the intellect and the imagination to try to come up with some solutions and try to implement some of those solutions. You know, we talk about student formation at BC. And developing the whole person. I don't think you can develop the whole person without really driving that entrepreneurial mindset and that way of thinking, which leads to innovation. So I really think that the Jesuit education, they were talking about entrepreneurship before any of us were talking about entrepreneurship.
That's awesome. So we are going to move to audience questions now. And if I am navigating this system, which is new to me, correctly, I think we have a question from a BC High student, which is it, all right, I have to close this chat. Hold on. Ding. The question is, close the chat and go to the question. Is it better to be alone or with many people to reach your goals? Oh, that is a philosophical question. So you're looking for pain points. You need to be moved to action. Is innovation basically a solo endeavor or is it a team endeavor? Matt, you're the Harvard guy. That's a tough question. Let's hear it.
I think these guys can all handle it, but I would say it is. I always encourage people to find a co-founder. So you're in it with someone. Two is better than one. I would say building something in concert with other people is going to allow you to build something better. I do think at the same time you need to build the sense of grit and resilience to go it alone, because it is I know entrepreneurs who've gotten rejected hundreds of times by funders before they got a yes. So you need to cultivate that sense that you're committed enough to do it and fly solo if need be. But as others have said, innovation is better as a team sport.
All right, Raj, I have a tough question for you next. I think this may come from a teacher, but it could come from a parent. How do you get 16-year-olds thinking about innovation and creative thinking, or getting them to experiment with different curriculum? That can be a hard thing to do, to sort of veer from the pack when you're 16 years old.
Yes. So that's a great question. And to me, when I think about this, especially in high school, we need to be very careful about fostering creativity. A lot of times what happens is we make them into conformers, and they lose out that entrepreneurial spirit when they come to college, etc. There is a very famous joke by Sir Ken Robinson in his TED Talk, where there is a child who's drawing a picture, and the teacher asks, "What are you drawing?" And the child says, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher says, "Nobody has seen God." And the child says, "They will in a minute." And so the important thing here is we need to foster that creative spirit. One of the things that I always tell parents, and this is true for our college students, is at the end of the week, don't call your student and ask them how they did in organic chemistry or entrepreneurship or a humanities course. Ask them, are they a better thinker this week than they were last week? And to me, at the end of the day, the ability for these students to come together, learning to collaborate, get the ideas from other people, etc. But most importantly, like Steve said, taking the creative idea and moving them to action, these are things that they should learn. And it might be a curricular engagement, but it also could be co-curricular engagement, which is where I think the whole Shield Center becomes extraordinarily critical in fostering this capability.
So that was, you guys are killing it with the questions, but they're only getting harder. So stay focused here. President Spinelli, innovation is our next question, closely related to risk-taking and envisioning the future. I raised 3 teenagers. Envisioning the future long-term, not always a great strength. So how can parents and schools develop these capabilities in high schoolers? Whoops. Somehow you're muted.
Sorry, I'm back. I would ask the parents to think much earlier than high school in starting that. I really did mean the womb thing, that we ought to be exploring experiences and putting them through, giving them opportunities to synthesize information, not to just take in information. I would encourage BC High and teachers to think about grading them on their thought processes, not necessarily the outcomes. The outcomes can change all the time, but if they're thinking more and more about how to build their minds and how to put data together and how to work with ambiguity and how to be rewarded for working with ambiguity. The problem, again, I think part of the problem is you start with, every test starts, I got 100 before I start taking the test, and then I get marked down for my answers. I think it's a perverse incentive system. So I think we have to rethink how we incentivize students. It is about taking chances and getting outside. How deeply did you think about that? The answer is almost irrelevant, especially at 16 years old. So we create risks that are unnecessarily constraining. The risk is I won't get 100. The risk is I won't get into Boston College. That's a perverse set of incentives. Let's change that. It is completely within our power to change that. So let's start at BC High. That's why, the Shields Innovation Center is important, because I think it naturally embraces the more indirect kinds of intellectual synthesis rather than the rote. Let's do that more. Let's get that into the junior high schools. Let's get it to other high schools. I'll use that as an example. I think that changing that mindset and that reward system will change the risk-return perspective.
So you just gave us a great tangible example of how teachers and educators could potentially change grading system, maybe not the entire grading system, but try it in some ways. So that was a very practical way to encourage risk taking. Jerry, what about for parents? What ways could they encourage appropriate, I inserted that to this question, by the way, I'm a mother, appropriate risk taking in their children? I had to do it. I'm sorry. I'm a Catholic mother. I was going to insert that appropriate risk taking before I asked that question.
No, I think I kind of agree with what Steve said. It starts so early, but I think as parents, first and foremost, you got to make sure your students and your children understand that if failing is not a big problem. Don't worry about stuff. So if you get that, if they can accept that, then you encourage them to get into moments where they're uncomfortable. So try things that maybe they wouldn't necessarily think about trying, whether it's maybe it's going out to the debate team, it's trying out for a sport they're not good at. Could be maybe trying to join the theater club. I know a lot of high school kids maybe don't want to do that, but the point is getting uncomfortable. I think also if students can just hear people talk about their oown journeys. When we bring people into BC and they talk about their journeys, they talk about all these things that they weren't good at and that they tried and that they ended up failing at, and they laugh at themselves about it. And I think if students can realize that, somebody said it earlier. I think it was Raj that said, like, this is not a world where it's like everything has to go perfectly for you. Like, it's a good thing to trip and fall. I always say, if you trip and fall, you get up and you dust yourself off and you keep going and you move forward. So I think that mindset, if parents can bring that mindset into their home, and I can't stress enough about how important it is that your child doesn't feel like they're a failure if they fail at something. Like, if they took a hard course, if they take it and they come home and they get a B-, but they took the course, they learned a lot, like, that's awesome. Like, who cares about the B-? They took a course that they knew they were going to be challenged at. And they didn't come home with a great grade, but they learned a ton. And most importantly, they learned about something they never would have challenged themselves if they were so worried about making sure they're going to get the A.
So that was more practical advice. All right, we're going to a lightning round. I am just, I'm changing up the format here for the last question, but I'm giving you a little bit of notice. And if you fail, don't worry, because it's okay. But we want to know how each of you can offer one idea on how the Shields Center and BC High can engage more parents or alumni in this effort that they've undertaken, that we're all now have become a part of, to encourage innovation reward the fail fast and iterate mentality, and expose the boys to entrepreneurship. And because I'm Catholic, there has to be rules. You can't offer an idea you've already offered, right? I mean, politicians do that all the time. They had a good idea at the beginning of the thing. They think nobody's paying attention. So you can't say field trips. We heard that. Bring in entrepreneurs. We heard that. I want you to give one quick answer. You can't say tell them in the womb, President Spinelli, but one quick answer about how we engage parents and alumni to encourage innovation, fail fast and iterate, and expose boys to entrepreneurship. Lightning round, because believe it or not, this hour flew by due to all of your brilliance. So Matt, I'll start with you, and you have no idea where I'm going next.
No, I don't. So, all these parents they have day jobs or they have nonprofits or things they're affiliated in. I'd say, let's take this out of a level of abstraction and, alumni especially, bring the problems that they're facing in their organization and engage these 7th to 12th graders in them, because they're going to have new ideas and it's going to feel practical and be meaningful and, I think create a positive bond between generations.
Oh, Matt set a very high bar. Okay, Raj, we'll go to you next.
Okay, so I'm going to focus on the parents. Don't focus too much on the outcomes. Focus on the process, because you cannot guarantee outcomes. And, as a wise man once said to me, life is about successes and learning experiences. But as long as they learn the process, the right process of doing it and becoming innovative and entrepreneurial, that is going to stand them in good stead in the long run.
Focus on the process, not the outcomes. I might have to add that to my list. All right, Jerry. That means you're going to be wrapping it up, President Spinelli. No pressure.
This is very practical. I would say set up some mentoring opportunities and set up some internships. So really connecting the students with good, solid mentors that have had experience with innovation and entrepreneurship. And also, let's get some of these students and give them some internships. Parents have great companies. They work at companies. There's opportunities. Get that experience for the student.
You have a very high bar, President Spinelli, but I have very high hopes for you in your answer.
Too high. I'm going to disappoint you, but I'm also going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to give you 2 bits of advice. One is to listen to these 3 guys. I think they've just been fantastic, and I've taken a bunch of notes, so I'm gonna use some of your advice. I think it's fantastic. I would also BC High, I think, has a competitive advantage in that they have core values that are pretty well articulated, and I would center much of the learning on the core values. And so if I can take bigger risks if I don't take risks with my values.
That's a good one to end with. And you also, and we're running out of time, and you nicely did what I need to do before I throw it over to Grace, which is to thank each of you. I occasionally went off script. No one would have guessed that I would do such a thing. But you made it go fast. I think we gave practical advice and some inspiration. And this was just a great way to spend an hour. And now I am going to send it back to the great leader of Boston College High School, Grace.
Wow, that was fantastic. On behalf of all of us at BC High, I'd like to thank Governor Swift and our panelists, President Spinelli, Matt, Raj, and Jerry, for their insights over the past hour. We thank you for your collaborative spirit and partnership. No question, innovation can be taught, and here at BC High, it will be taught. I've come away from today's program more energized than ever about the impact of the Shield Center for Innovation, and I'm so excited to have you as partners. And that impact starts now. I'm delighted that this spring, our students are participating in the inaugural Shield Center for Innovation Challenge, where they'll be working on innovative solutions with some of the problems facing our city today. Using Boston as a classroom, they'll tackle issues from transit to telework, from the environment to education. I can't wait to hear what they come up with. We'll be sharing more details in the coming weeks. Until then, thank you again for joining us today. Thank you again to Jack Shields for his vision, generosity, and spirit. The sun is shining brightly today here on Columbia Point, and I'm confident that we have an even brighter future ahead of us as we launch the Shields Center for Innovation here at BC High. Thank you very much and have a great day.